all you guys, and welcome back to the Branding Rebellion cast. We are here in Hotel Petaluma in the heart of the wine country here in Sonoma County, California. Today I have a special guest who I met only a few weeks ago. He's all the way from the UK, from London. He's been here since September, so only about 2 months from this production date. This guy has been in banking. This guy has had a very great undergrad experience. He's been on the social entrepreneurship side, and now he is here in the States, and I had the opportunity, and I'm blessed enough to be able to work side by side with him in an MBA program. Without further ado, you guys, we have Jack Hamilton Fellows today joining us, and we're gonna have a good time. So we'll just really dive right in, Jack.
Yeah, mate, well, thank you.
So you're from the UK. I've never been, and I've always wanted to go. What's it like growing up there? I know that's a really vague, strange question, but so many of us watching may not even know.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear maybe about sort of what Americans think about people in the UK. I was on the sort of American Airlines plane, on the United plane over here, and I just asked for a cup of tea, and I thought that was quite a standard thing. Yeah. And he's like, "Oh no, I don't think I can do that for you. You're gonna have to make it yourself because I don't feel capable." So yeah, I think obviously we have a lot of tea, and I actually lived through a part of my life actually in Windsor, which is where the Queen resides for parts of the year. Wow. Yeah, it's an amazing place, and the castle is stunning. I think the difference to the UK than here is that one, everything's close together, the roads are super narrow, like the cars are small, and yeah, it's just that the buildings are so much more old as well. So for instance, the house I grew up in, so it's in a very small town called Bewdley, and it's at least 600 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. And yeah, it's gone through like loads of different phases. It used to be a bar at one point. It used to be a guest house, and my dad bought it as a complete wreck and like built it from scratch because he's a builder. And yeah, so that's the house that I've sort of grown up in and lived in pretty much most of my life.
Wow, and I think like when you say things like the house I lived in growing up was 600 years old, like when you first said that, I was like, whoa, but then I remembered, when you go back to elementary and middle school and high school history class, geography class, that's still very much the old world, right?
Yeah.
So like to you guys, as you mentioned, that may not be strange, when to me, when you said 600, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Speaking of 600 in numbers, how old or what year was it, if you can remember, when you first decided, okay, I'm going to get into business. I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to do, but I see that, and I believe I can do some of that to some capacity. Take us through that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think it must have been maybe 14 or 13, and I thought, oh, I want to be a CEO. And then my next thought was, actually, I want to be an investment banker so I can work with CEOs. And I don't know, it's a pretty young age to be thinking about like investment banking per se. And it's just, yeah, it was just sort of a very weird, I was just very ambitious basically from a very early age. And I wanted to sort of create a business and sort of make quite a lot of money. And I think that sort of came from a lot of my dad's side of the family. They've all done really well for themselves, and they've all been sort of entrepreneurs, or they've built businesses. And have you heard of a band called UB40? So it's a very famous sort of, it's a very famous band that sort of came up in the 1970s. And my aunt created a record label, and she took them to a platinum record.
Wow.
So there's some really really cool stuff there.
That's neat. That's neat.
Yeah. So this and it's interesting because they all came from a family which their parents always struggled. My grandma always sort of struggled for money growing up, and I think from that they had this real sort of drive to sort of create something. And my parents do very well, and they've got like very stable like jobs and work, but like comparatively they're not like they're not like millionaires. And my mum's a nurse and my dad's a builder. It's like they're very sort of like ordinary sort of lives. And and I think from that, like I've always been humble and appreciated money, but I've always wanted to like go the extra mile. I mean, I always got so frustrated because my dad would be like, "Oh, we can't like buy that because it's too expensive."
Yeah.
And I always wanted to like not have those limits and not have those barriers and kind of push through that. So I think my first ever business was at the age of 17. So became a personal trainer, and during this time, I just sort of decided, right, okay, I'm going to start training people, and
Yeah.
so I started doing like fitness plans, like building like workouts for people, and I just started talking to different people and charging like £30 an hour. So I don't know. Yeah, that's sort of probably like $50 an hour for personal training sessions at the age of like, yeah, 17. I was like, yeah, exactly. I managed to sort of persuade a few people that I was sort of older than I was and had more experience than I actually did, and managed to create like a sort of really cool community, and we do circuit classes. So that was kind of my first inkling, and ever since then I've been interested in entrepreneurship.
So, wow, that was good. So, I dabbled in the training space when I was younger.
I can see that.
Yeah, and we, in fact, shout out to Riley there in the background. So, you mentioned that your extended family, including your mom and dad and your extended family, that they had to be a bit more frugal coming up, and that their overall approach and attitudes toward their life and their work, you saw that and that inspired you. Take us through then when you started your first business, training, and you had that sense of community. Was that ambition always there, even throughout, even when maybe you had, I guess what I'm asking is, were there ever any moments of doubt in the middle, or you were just always like, no matter what comes, I'm ready, I'm prepared, and this thing is gonna work?
Yeah, so I think I've always had doubt for sure, and yeah, there's definitely been some really difficult moments. So I think a lot of the entrepreneurial side is kind of trying to discover who I was and trying to be more authentic to myself, which I think is often the case for entrepreneurs. And yeah, like I kind of had like a sort of a history of sort of like panic attacks, depression, like anxiety and things like that, and a lot of that like drove the sort of the drive to sort of achieve and to do better and to also be as you say, part of these communities. And with the fitness stuff, like as a kid I was overweight, and overcoming that obstacle and the sort of challenges that came with that, I wanted to help others and give back to others and help others that maybe are on that journey. And that was something that was really powerful. And I think everything I've done since then has had that sort of that element of community, an element of helping other people through things that I've maybe struggled with. And I think it's just part and parcel of that, really.
Wow, I'm with you. So, with that self-discovery that you mentioned, with the authenticity that you alluded to, growing up more overweight, do you feel like, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, don't let me guide you or put words in your mouth at all. Do you feel like when you were working with a client who maybe had a similar issue, that it was easier for you to understand their plight because you've been in their shoes?
Yeah, definitely. So my first client was like, it's hard for me to sort of compare the metrics because obviously you guys are on a different scale, but
It's okay.
20, so she was at the age of 24, she was 23 stone, which,
You're right.
I can't like describe, but she was essentially like,
Viewers, if you're
yeah,
near your
exactly.
calculator
Yeah,
or
you
you're
get
at a search engine and you have a search engine nearby, look it up, because right now I don't know either.
But okay, so in terms of like width, maybe she was like out like sort of this wide, and so like it was a big challenge because she couldn't even do body weight exercises, and so like we had to really like think about what we could do really carefully so that we wouldn't damage any like parts of her body. And but I had like a sort of enormous amount of empathy for what she was going through. Yeah, because it's incredibly tough, and I think what people forget when you're at a certain level of fitness, or whatever fitness level you are, you think that what comes easy to you will come easy to other people, but actually we're all on such different like levels that you have to really think like, okay, well, doing this is like for me doing X, Y, and Z. And so yeah, we managed to like have some really like cool little strategies. And for instance, we would like running like a lap of the park was like a major deal for her. And like what we did was we break it up by like looking at each lamppost and like just going one lamppost to the next lamppost, and next thing you know, you've done 2 laps, and you're like, you're so proud of yourself. It's, and I think that's also something that I took into my own life, is like when there's a big task at hand, those little sort of milestones that you run towards really help you sort of achieve.
That's good. So it sounds like what you're saying is celebrate those small victories, especially when you have a client, you know, who does have a huge goal to conquer and a huge gap to fill. It's, you know, how can you keep that person engaged and motivated, right? Because through time, you know, now that you're clearly fit, you know, sometimes to your point, it's easy to project that onto others, like, oh, I do it, you can do it, right? But it's funny because you can take that same history and you can either have that, oh, I can do it, you can do it attitude, or you can have the attitude like, okay, let's slow it down, let's make some small marks, celebrate the small victories because you're significant and you're worth it.
And also it's that, you know, there's a lot of pain as well that is associated with trying to do these things. And so for instance, with me at school being overweight, like, you know, there was times where I was bullied. Like one time I sort of kicked down a flight of stairs. Like, you know, like although that pain was like a driver, like, I don't want people, like, I understand that, you know, other people might have already been through like similar like painful moments in their life, and it's like that's not the attitude to sort of that shouldn't be the reason for someone to like improve their lives. It should be through sort of empathy and authenticity and a sort of mutual understanding and encouragement.
If you could go back to yourself with who you are now, at the age you are now, if you could speak, like, just give your younger self a whisper in those moments, maybe you were being bullied or being kicked down the stairs, what would you tell him?
So yeah, I'd tell him that he was freaking awesome. Yeah, I'd say that you've got so many more skills than you think you do, and you've got so much more to offer than you think. And yeah, I guess like that sort of not having that in my life drove me almost too far sometimes into sort of that ambition and like pushing things almost too much, and in the result of sort of driving towards things, I almost pushed some other things away.
And I can identify with that a lot. So, and I think that's the side of overcoming things from a young age that's not talked about enough, is like, okay, well, now that I'm this overcomer, and now that I've, you know, especially, you know, when you're young, because, you know, it takes a certain degree of self-awareness, Jack, to be that young and say, okay, I need to make some changes, right? And since you're still in those developmental stages, you then you carry that same hustle and ambition in your future endeavors. And then to your point, you realize maybe I should kind of dial that energy back and channel it and not put so much pressure on me.
Yeah, well, I had some really interesting experiences. So a friend of mine at the age of sort of 17 or 18, we decided to go to Bali together. And so we went for a month, and it was quite funny really, because the person that he fancied most at that time had just been out to Bali and gone to all these places, and so he wanted to go to all these places to say to her, "Oh, look what I've done." And one of the places she went to was this palm. Exactly, yeah. One of the places she'd been to was a palm reader. And so he's like, we've got to go because, you know, she found out she was going to get married at 26, and I need to know whether it's going to be 26 for me, whether we're compatible, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, fine. We go this like long ass car journey. We like pull up. middle of nowhere. We meet this guy, and his fingernails were this long, and he was like the most like crazy sort of creepy thing. And yeah, my friend goes in there. He's maybe 15 minutes. He's like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I come out 45 minutes later, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? And so when you go in, he basically asks you two questions, like, do you want to know your future, or do you want to ask me a question? And at that time, like, my question was, will I ever be happy? Because I don't, like, up until that point, I'd never actually like appreciated or understood what it like really felt like to sort of enjoy life or live in the moment or even like love myself. And so the sort of years like following on from that, and the sort of stuff with Social Mercenary that we'll talk about was like a big part of that. And that was really a defining moment, because now I look at my life and I'm like, I think about each day and I'm so happy. And yeah, I don't really have those sort of same like, yeah, mental health challenges that I had before. And, you know, I really get to appreciate life on a whole another level. And had I not had that experience, you know, I wouldn't be where I am today. And interestingly, literally the day before I flew to come over to the States, my dad, he's fed up because I'm scared of wasps. And you have wasps over here, right?
Yeah,
like, yeah. So, and he's like, you know, you can't get anywhere in life if you're keep running away from wasps and like screaming. And so he got me this therapist, and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be I was very skeptical about it. And this guy, you know, just rocks up, and he's quite an interesting guy. He actually lives he's in a wheelchair, and so he sort of came into our really old house, which was not designed appropriately for him at all. But he took me through some amazing exercises, and one of the ones we did was I went back into my former self. I imagined like the time that I got stung, and I had to talk to my younger self and say, like, you know, it's okay, you know, wasps aren't scary, or like, you know, you can talk to them about, you know, where you are now, and really like give yourself some comfort. And it's so powerful because there's something subconscious in all of us where there's some issues from childhood that we haven't resolved, and just imagining yourself as a child and talking to yourself is phenomenally powerful. And it didn't just solve my like sort of phobia of wasps. It just made me emotionally better entirely. It was a really powerful exercise.
Wow. And thanks for sharing that, by the way. And thanks for your level of transparency thus far in the interview. Thank you so much. So why do you think it is that some people don't confront the childhood issues? And to dive deeper, because I know that question can be cliche and kind of vague, but like sometimes people aren't consciously running from it. But to what you and I talked about a few minutes ago, well, sometimes like you're just so used to overcoming and hustling and grinding and problem solving and looking forward to the next opportunity or the next like space where you're needed to fill a gap. Why do you think it is that some people don't confront those issues or don't have the opportunity to?
Yeah, so I think it's sort of twofold. So the first is that most people don't know that they have those childhood issues. They might just be like, they might have a lot of anger, or like they might get sort of very self-conscious about certain things and not really know why that is. But they might justify it in the moment to sort of things that they can see around them, or you know, they go to a restaurant and, you know, the waiter says something and they react sort of in a particular way, and they make a justification for that, but actually it could be something way back that they haven't even touched on. And then the second thing is like, okay, right, you know that, but then like, let's say it was something that like happened to you with your parents, like how, like most people don't know how to like resolve that internally. Like you might just sort of blame the situation or the person or whatever it was in the past, but actually, you know, the issue's internally with you. Like you're the one carrying it around on your shoulders, and it's like, so most people, don't know, and most people don't have the tools. That's it. Yeah.
Well, that's good. And so now that we know you had this ambition air about you even as a young teenager, You've uncovered how you went back and spoke to your younger self, just as something, or something that may just come off as small as just a wasp sting that actually could clearly be a metaphor for maybe some other things that you addressed later in life. So now, take us through now this more self-aware, this more self-reflective, authentic version of Jack Hamilton Fellows. And now, how was that translated into how you completed your undergrad, and then some things that you started or got into, like the Social Mercenary?
Yeah, so the whole sort of self-awareness piece and sort of, finding myself, I guess, stuff didn't really, that sort of was all coming through during my undergrad. So I studied banking and finance, and so before, well, let's take a step back before that really. So during the personal training stuff that I was doing, I was actually at the same time I was working as sort of a sort of engineer at a nuclear sort of power sort of production energy facility in the UK, and it's called EDF Energy. And so I was working in this really like very sort of bureaucratic industry, and it was, I mean, it was a very amazing time because you get to find out about sort of the electricity markets, how like power's like made, and obviously nuclear is just a really cool industry to sort of be in. I mean, the security was on another level, but going back to it sort of being bureaucratic, you had to hold the handrail whenever you went upstairs as part of their safety policy, because nuclear is one of the most potentially hazardous industries there is, and so you had to just, they had to take safety to the next level, and that included being in the office, which I used to hate because I kept getting electrocuted by the metallic railings. It was an absolute nightmare. And so at the time I was thinking about doing chemical engineering. The reason I was going to do chemical engineering was because I saw that it had one of the highest UK starting salaries. And at the time that was that ambition, like thinking about money. Exactly, yeah. But I got there, and during that time I was always thinking about the corners of the office, because the corners where the boss sits. I was like, wow, how do I get over there? And even though I was just starting my career, I was networking with some really influential people within the company, and met some fascinating people. And I actually managed to get myself a secondment in the sort of financial energy trading side of the business, which was completely like different to the sort of more engineering type stuff I was doing before. And that really sort of sparked a change for me, because,
Why is that?
well, it was fast paced, it was dynamic, like people were sort of making money, and it was, there was so many, it really had a global view as well, because when you think about oil, or if you think about like natural gas, it's being shipped all over the world, and the price is changing minute to minute. And so, a ship could be on its way to the US, but because of a price change, or because of maybe sort of a natural disaster, it has to be diverted to a completely different country, because someone has already bought what's in the ship while it's on the way to the US. And so, and then you've got things that like, there's like different types of the market. So there's like a future market, which is sort of 8 months to 12 months in advance. So people are looking at sort of, okay, is it going to be a cold winter? Okay, what are the storage level that we've got? What's the capacity in the country? And then that determines all these different prices, which are all interrelated. And so I found that fascinating.
Wow.
And so from that, I decided to sort of go down the track of sort of banking and finance. So that's what I did my bachelor's in.
So you transitioned from the engineering side to the finance side at the nuclear organization. So then what'd you do next?
Yeah, so I think this is where I sort of really found my passion, because I think the banking stuff was all really just about the money, and it was a bit soulless really. So I kind of got into this whole startup ideas, and I found this like NGO that basically took people out to Ghana, and we would work with small businesses out there. So I did sort of big fundraiser. I actually had hair down to here, which I cut off and donated the hair and raised money to go out there, which is, it's crazy. And when I was out there, it was, I think I actually wrote in my journal the other day, well, yesterday, that Ghana's my home. because everyone was feeling homesick out there, and I just felt completely at peace. And so the program that we went on, I was partnered up with a local Ghanaian that had a sort of business education, and then we'd go into small companies and really help them sort of do basic accounting, marketing, finance, maybe even get sort of an investment proposal. So we were sort of acting as consultants, and we were working with a company called MJAP, and Mr. Samuel, who owned the company, was so passionate. He really wanted to, so the product was smoked fish, and he honestly wanted to take over the whole of Ghana, and he had some incredibly amazing plans to sort of revolutionize the fishing industry over there. So we worked really closely with him, and it was a really amazing experience, and really sort of opened my eyes to how incredible entrepreneurs in Africa are. And despite the resources that they've got, they're doing phenomenal things. And so I really just fell in love with that. And that's really what sort of spurred on my next business, which is the Social Mercenary. And so what happened there was everyone kept asking me to sort of sell their Ghanaian products over in the UK, and I didn't really want to sell smoked fish. And so I found these amazing backpacks, and everyone loved them. Like the African prints are absolutely incredible. And so that's exactly what I did. I used my student loan, and I bought 90 bags, but I'd already planned to move to Hong Kong. So I moved out to Hong Kong, completely different atmosphere to Ghana, and I was living in a room the size of this sofa, and I've got these 90 bags on top of me, and I'm like, crap, I've got to try and sell them.
Wow, you're literally sleeping with your inventory. Wow, that's entrepreneurship right there, Jack.
Well, I mean, the difficulty that we faced was when I was buying them, was the money got stuck somewhere because they didn't process a transaction. They thought it was dodgy. And I rang my aunt up and I was like, do you have a few £1,000 lying around so that I can like make this transfer come through? They're like, oh, who's it to? Oh yeah, just someone in Ghana. And he sounded like so sort of sketchy at the time. But I managed to get it all to come through. We got this massive delivery, and we had this incredible event set up at this sort of incredible first class hotel, and we're in this lobby and it's beautiful, and there's sort of a Christmas fair going on, and we bring all our inventory there, and we're sort of waiting a few hours and no sales. And that's when it's really dawned on me that I was like, right, this is going to be difficult. This is going to be really difficult. And to make it worse, when we couldn't afford to get a taxi back, so we had to take the subway. And we all piled in with these massive boxes into the elevator, and none of us pressed the sort of floor button. So we're all stuck in this elevator, and no one can move their hands. It was the most embarrassing thing, because we had to get rescued. But yeah, so from there, I just started selling on the streets, and there's one time I got images of it. I just went to a student campus, and there was a table there, and I just put my stuff on it and started selling. Wow. And yeah, it was the most incredible experience. Like, selling is the most vital skill, and you know this from what you're doing, but it's tricky, and it's like nerve-wracking, and just perfecting that pitch and guiding people through the process was probably the best learning experience I've ever had. It was incredible.
So to that point, as we wrap up, and I hate to do it with urgency, but we're almost out of time, but as we wrap up, and hopefully it won't be the last time you see Jack, with all we've gone over today, and he just made a really good point about selling, because if we can have the most amazing ideas, cool, innovative, great products, but if we don't have someone to market and sell it and really hone those skills, it's pretty difficult. So in closing, with all we've talked about, what would you tell someone? They can be teenagers, they can be our age. What would you tell someone right now who's maybe sitting on an idea, or they're struggling with it, or they're just, maybe they're doubtful and they're not as ambitious? What would you whisper to them tonight?
I'd whisper, like, just execute, just try something. It's with the technology that we've got, just go out and try something. It's so easy now. Like, you can set up a website, you can start something, you can get your first order. It's really possible, and facing that fear is going to be the the most game-changing, best life decision you'll ever make.
Said like a true entrepreneur. So thank you so much, Jack, for coming out. I'm sure that you are an inspiration to people who you've met. Hopefully you inspired some of our viewers. You definitely inspired me sincerely. And just thank you so much for being here and for being a part of this. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to the Branding Rebellion cast. We'll see you guys next time.